Welcome to New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union. I'm your host, Sean. I took a week off just because it's hot. Where I record is in my room, and it is hot without a fan, and you guys can't hear me with a fan. So it's just getting hotter, but I still decided to go ahead and squeak one out today to drop tonight. Well, most of you will listen to it tomorrow, those of you that do listen. So what's going on in New Mexico Black Rifle Operators Union? Well, I've been looking time and time again about what to cover and where to go, and it's kind of funny. We're in this weird space for the new election year that you're not hearing a lot about the 2A. Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have come out and said basically, fight against all the rights that we have, what's left of them. J.D. Vance has come and countered that, so has Trump. The ATF kind of shut the hell up, except for they're still fighting and against the FRT triggers. If you didn't know, the FRT triggers was just force reset triggers. They won in court. So them and Echo triggers are pretty much safe for right now until the ATF goes and fights it again. In New Mexico, the special session was held. None of the stuff the governor wanted to do for public safety, except for more penalties for felons with firearms, was pushed because it was kept short, because a lot of people didn't see the value in what she was doing, because she has no real value. Let's just be honest. New Mexico would be better without our governor. It's kind of telling, and I hope that the Harris administration goes out, because we damn sure don't want our governor to end up somewhere else. New Jersey ended up overturning the AR-15 ban. However, they still got a magazine ban, a capacity ban. So there's some wins and there's some losses. There's a lot of people still talking about the assassination attempt on President Trump. And I still think that's very kind of hilarious to listen to, because there's a lot of conspiracies rolling around that. And let's just be honest. Anyone in the 2A has known this for a long time, especially if you're a long-time listener and a long-time person in the 2A, that our federal government is incompetent, like royally incompetent. To think that they're competent to pull any of these conspiracies off is kind of asinine, in my opinion, because you saw how well the government can manage the world when it tried to shut it down. We still did things that they didn't like. And we still did things because we're humans. The same thing happens with the 2A. They're not going to ban it. More locally, there's a shootout at a local plaza, which is just down the road from me. I've heard that there was one fatality. I have not heard the official story, but it reemphasizes yet again, stay strapped or get clapped. At that same token, I've had two different people come forward in the last 3 days and tell me, hey, I'm so happy to know that you're always carrying, because I feel safer when you're in the room. That's a different level of 2A acceptance, and that's pretty much what you can expect in Northwest New Mexico. We're rural enough. We know that our delay times are kind of harsh for getting cops to get to us, usually 30 minutes to an hour on the best day. Again, I still don't necessarily say that's because of lack of manpower. I think that has a lot to do with how we district things here in New Mexico, Northwest New Mexico, and the fact that we don't, there's a huge geographic difference along with construction times that are going on. Anyone who lives in Northwest New Mexico knows as school gets ready to start, about the 2 months before it, city officials decide that they're going to do construction everywhere. And that's what's going on in New Mexico, or in Northwest New Mexico right now. One of our main arteries to get back and forth from east to west in Farmington has been cut off because they're doing some upgrades to the water mains. I'm not necessarily opposed to this. It's nice to finally see some of our tax money going to some sort of infrastructure plan that might actually improve people's lives. It's just really damned inconvenient, and they'll probably have it finished up before school starts, which is this upcoming week. Thursday and Friday of this year, of next week that is, school starts in Northwest New Mexico. Be careful of the little dudes as they're going back and forth to school. It does raise that moment, though, of wondering why you're still sending them to public schools, because if you expect anything different from sending kids to public school other than getting back Romans, send the old saying goes, quit sending your kids to Caesar and expecting anything other than Romans. So you're expecting the same result. I started a fight, an online fight, and I've continued to fight it, where I said, understand I'm a Christian conservative is what they brand me as, but I'm more so an ANCAP, but I am a Christian. I started a fight when I said that Christian conservatives are the worst voters. They never go out and vote. And a lot of people are taking issue with that, but I stand by that. If Christian conservatives would go out and vote, we wouldn't be in the cases we are in the culture war that we have been in for years now. And that's the truth. If you look at what's going on with Kamala even coming close to winning and beating Trump or anyone else that the right puts up, it's because you guys don't go to the polls. I understand that in a lot of ways. There was a point in time where I considered not voting, but my love of the 2A and love of my country doesn't allow that. So I'll still continue to vote until it's time not to. That said, I've already said who I'm voting for president. Locally, I am looking at Rodney Montoya because of his record of backing the 2A, and I'm looking at a couple other dudes that have been backing the 2A for many years, even though they're incumbents. Incumbent to me is a bad word, and in general, I usually want to vote every one of them out. But it looks like it's the best option for Northwest New Mexico. We don't end up with the government we want if we don't at least try to say what we want. And if you have enough of a beef with the government, it's time to run. And myself, I've spoken about this many times. I don't feel like having to go through all that crap to try to run, to try to change the country, because I think it can be done in other ways. A lot of you small businesses, congratulations on changing the country, because if it weren't for you, the country wouldn't be where it's at. In general, it wouldn't not be a country. People that have the entrepreneurial spirit are the ones that keep our country going. Those little small businesses add up, and it makes the federal government and the local and city governments, as well as state governments, look up, because they expect tax receipts from you guys. And you only are able to pay taxes if you're successful. And you guys continually do that. What does that mean? It means you guys are the backbone of our country. Whether you're a mom and pop oil and gas company or you're a mom and pop diner, you are adding to our economy. You are helping our country. You are making that little dream that you have is making a difference, whether you believe it or not. We're in an economic downturn. It doesn't feel like that for some places. They seem like they're doing really well, usually the big box places. And banks always seem to do well. But the truth is, we're in a downturn. We're in this weird alignment phase of the world where we're trying to fix ourselves 100% from COVID. We have offshored all of our manufacturing. And in doing so, we've realized that that's a bad plan. We need to reshore a lot of our manufacturing here. Most of us who are America First or ANCAPs in general, we've known this for a long time, that you can't keep having China make everything and expect the American consumer to have the things they need and want forever. The Chinese, if we were to ever go to war with China, all that stuff would be cut off from us instantly. And what would we do then? So I think that's a big determinant of why we have not went to war with China, is that a lot of our stuff is still made there. We're trying to reshore here, but in doing so, that causes inflation. And anyone who says that there isn't inflation hasn't been to the grocery store or filled up their gas tank. I spent $123 today on the minimal amount of groceries I need for myself and my cats and my son, and that'll last maybe 2 weeks, and that's starting to hurt. I didn't take a job after I left the district that pays me the exact same, at least not yet. I have been promoted, I think. I know they just haven't made it formally official with the the checks starting to land for me. So I've settled a lot of my things, so I'm doing okay now. I just think that there's a lot of people in worse cases than mine right now. I'm seeing more and more people, in the grocery stores sacrificing this or that. Just by walking by, I see people doing that, making the choice for the cheaper item, whatever it is. And it all boils down to inflation. All this matters because eventually what it does is prove the point that if you're not willing to defend yourself in every way possible, whether it's the ballot box or the soap box or the actual cartridge box, you're going to get run over. And I still believe in my country, but I also know that there's a lot of people that are extremely comfortable, and without them experiencing this uncomfortable time and place right now, they're not going to change. They're not going to do anything. And the only way we see change is when people start actually feeling uncomfortable and doing something different. Necessity is the mother of invention, and that's where we're at. I keep looking at all these fun stuff that's come out. The 2A guys, what have they released that's new? Brennan Herrera's AK-50 is now finished product. You can actually buy one now, I believe. And it looks pretty slick. And it is original AK. It has some AK DNA in a lot of ways. It's kind of a neat idea. I don't know that I want one of those specifically. I do want a 50 cal because I'm a big fan of long-range shooting. Mr. Guns and Gear proved again why the Spaz 12 is probably not one of the shotguns that anybody would want other than a video game shotgun. There are some, it looks cool, but in practicality and what you'd use, Mossberg 500 or a Rem 870 would probably do better for you. And, I have been in that mode again. I have two ladies that have come to me and asked about the 2A and how to get into it because they live by themselves and they know that they're going to have to defend themselves if things go sideways. And in this world, does that not make sense? It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that when there's shootings, when there's lootings happening in your neighborhood, your city, that you probably should start being a little more self-aware and take more care of what you do and how you take care of those around you and yourself. I always say it, stay strapped or get clapped. It seems to be more and more apropos if you watch what's going on in the world. The world will get you, and there is no escape from that, at least for now. We have that opportunity to stand up and say no. But are you willing to go toe-to-toe? These people that want to force their way on you, you can't tell them no if they're armed and you're not. Because they actually have a force multiplier that you don't have the capability or the use of. And as long as you continually follow the ethos of the left, you're behind the 8 ball. And you will never get above it. Because they want you uninformed, and they want you unarmed. They want you as helpless as they possibly can get you. And that's exactly the opposite of what I want to do. I want to make sure you're informed of what's going on in the 2A specifically. Politically, we're in that election cycle where you should be paying attention. Whether you vote for Biden or Harris now, or you vote for Trump, either one, get out there and vote. Make your word known. There's a lot of people that I think the right still doesn't get that aren't going to vote for Trump because he's a convicted felon. And whether you say they're made-up charges or not, the fact is he's a convicted felon. And that's enough for a lot of people that are law and order types that there's no way in hell you're going to get anyone to vote for that man. You have that. You have independents that they're holding their nose watching the political situation right now and kind of going, these are the two options I have. Well, of the two, she's the lesser of the two evils for them. And I say that because most people have already made their decision on who they're going to vote for nationally. But let's take a look at what's going on locally, because that matters. Because they're the ones that are fixing your streets. They're the ones that are, influencing school boards. They're the ones that are affecting policy locally that you're going to have to deal with. And in New Mexico specifically, a lot of people were asleep at the wheel because they allowed ultra leftist ideas to come into play in New Mexico, and they're just now waking up like, oh wow, what do we do? That's why I say Christian conservatives are probably the worst voters ever, because they don't pay attention until it's too late. 2 years ago we were talking about this during the Roundhouse session when they were wanting to go after guns, and they didn't do it because the gun owners stood up and said no. But those issues were there. We were telling all of our friends, hey man, you need to come protest this as well as this. And they didn't bother to do it, and look what happened. We have abortion up till point of birth in Farmington, New Mexico. One of the most conservative places in New Mexico. And we have it here. Why? Because of that. We have gender studies being taught in New Mexico schools. Why? Because you didn't bother to check what the Roundhouse docket was. We have tons and tons of misallocation of New Mexico dollars for projects that aren't going to matter to us at all. They shut down the power plant up here in northwest New Mexico, or are in the process of doing that, in favor of solar. And while I am a fan of solar in southwest New Mexico, because we have 6.5 hours of sun every day of the year, that's awesome, so we can make a difference there. We can generate a lot of power, but it shows again that New Mexico is always an energy producer. That does not solve the fossil fuel problem. All of you guys that charge your electric vehicles, what do you plug them into? Coal-fired power plants, gas-fired power plants. The world still needs that fossil fuel energy to go. And anyone who thinks that we're going to just green the entire grid better slip into their PJs and realize what it takes to do that are material inputs that don't exist. Nowhere in mankind have we ever doubled or tripled, material inputs like copper, just for one country, basically, to do what they need to do. It's not going to happen. What's going on in the Ukrainian war? It looks like the Russians are bouncing back. This is a war of attrition now. F-16s have landed there. They're showing them off with Zelensky having an F-16 in his background. What is that going to do? I don't know. You're taking a 35-year-old plane or 40-year-old plane and dropping it in the background, and you're hoping it's going to take off against Russian planes that are about the same age. Unless they end up with some of our new wonder weapons, long-range missiles for those planes, they're not going to do much. Especially with only Ukrainian pilots only having 9 months to learn how to fly them. Now, that says a lot because it's easier to fly the F-16 than any other plane, from my understanding. The Israelis were taking 9-year-olds and teaching them how to fly them. So it's very possible this has a game-changing effect in the Ukraine-Russian war. But the reality is we just keep dumping our old weapons into the Ukraine right now in hopes that we stall the Russians from going any farther west, because then we have that nasty fight with them. And that'll probably go nuclear, because we know we would beat the Russians. Same thing goes with the Chinese. I'm not too worried about the Chinese other than losing the manufacturing capacity that we've invested so much into. But that's probably going to happen eventually anyway. So that's what's going on in the world right now. The election's still booming. People are making their choices. They're making their word known. Don't lose any friends or family over this, because, well, you have to live with them. And let's be honest, we've lived through Obama. We've lived through Trump. We've lived through Bush. We've lived through Clinton. At least I have. I've lived through Reagan. Nothing's going to change at that level. They don't know our name. It's better to be kind and keep your friends and your family and just have an open, honest discussion. When they say this stuff doesn't happen, show them the videos. Show them what these guys are actually saying, what they're doing, because that's the only way we win. Like, share, subscribe. Most importantly, be great.